गुड आफ्टरनून, नमस्ते। वरुण जी, कैसे हैं आप?
मैं तो बढ़िया हूँ। आप कैसे हैं?
मैं बिल्कुल ठीक हूँ, बहुत बहुत बढ़िया। वरुण जी, आज ये सेशन जो है वो बुक नर्ड्स ने अरेंज करा है, एंड आई एम सो हैप्पी दैट आई कुड कनेक्ट डॉट्स विद यू एज एन ऑथर, थैंक्स टू टीम ऑफ बुक नर्ड्स, नेहा एंड रोहन, हु अरेंज दिस। एंड कॉर्पोरेट कर्मा, आपकी जो किताब है, नेविगेटिंग स्पिरिचुअल रिस्क, this when I saw this, when I was shown this book to review and to read it, I was actually intrigued by the title itself. It showed me your, Varun as a personality. When I went through the book, was कि ये स्पिरिचुअल साइड को और कॉर्पोरेट कर्मा को इकट्ठा करना, ये एक बड़ा यूनिक बुक था। तो इसके बारे में थोड़ा, क्या ये बुक के बारे में आप थोड़ा बताएंगे तो?
Yeah, so basically, this book's theme revolves around the fact that any organization or organizations across the world can't look at financial parameters or parameters related to productivity alone to measure their success. And I think a key cog in their operations that they are missing is a very important stakeholder who are all of us employees who have been working with such organizations across the board for so many years. Yes, the concept of loyalty is not there as of now, but that is something which many organizations are still disregarding. And this book precisely brings out that topic as to how organizations can not only survive but thrive in this hyper competitive world by focusing on every employee's well-being, whether it is emotional or whether it is spiritual well-being. So that's the theme of this book, and I have tried to bring certain elements of a rich spiritual heritage, including teachings of Chanakya and Lord Krishna,
Absolutely.
into the and blend a mix of modern and traditional teachings so that all the leaders across the board, across organizations, can take some tips from this and implement in the organization. So that's what the book is about.
So, Varun, you have actually given the gist of the entire book. So, when I look at your professional experience, you are into IT governance, risk, and compliance specialist. I call you like that. And because of that, the spiritual risk management or इसका जो amalgamation आपने किया, मतलब see, besides the balance sheet and the P&Ls and the top lines and the bottom lines, you have addressed a very unique topic of spiritual risk, right? And this cute little book of around 110 pages with 11 chapters actually encapsulates that. So, what I try to do is, because when I was going through the book, I was going through each chapter and then try to find out few things which I, as a reader, liked and which I want to have more elaboration on. So, if you are okay, we can go quickly between your chapters of the book, and then we can discuss as the journey goes on. Because something very interesting you have combined in the the middle chapters of Krishna's philosophy with Sudama, and putting it together with even cricket. Saurav Ganguly's example was something which I found that a corporate person who are into corporate will be able to more align rather than thinking of the hierarchy of top line your bosses or the below reportees. So in the chapter 1, when it talks about the spiritual risk management, uh, this is really needed in business, where you ask a very pertinent why question, and the factor of you will discuss. So can you give some more input on it? Why you thought it is the most important question in the first chapter itself?
Yeah, because if you see my chapter, I've given clearly case studies of different organizations who are doing very well, but then later on they had to file for bankruptcy, and they lost. Okay, obviously the reputation part also was off down the drain, whether it was Enron and all these Satyam and all that. So if you look at classic case studies, it clearly shows that they never had that intention of serving all your stakeholders, whether it was employees, whether it was investors, whether it was the community. It was all about greed. It was all about pride, that we are the top line either the other top companies, and no one can harm us, nothing can be done to us. And I think when it clearly showed a lack of, or a strong value system that these companies didn't have at all. So probably if they had this value system in place, and rather focused, okay, not on the spiritual word as such, but at least some values related to spirituality, then maybe they would have still been here, you know reporting their quarterly performance and so on. Now we haven't even, now they are not there in the picture at all. It's completely different companies that are doing really well in the corporate area.
So I
That's the
remember,
reason why that is the missing link, the spiritual risk related to every employee's spiritual and emotional well-being that should be
and I think
focused on.
name of companies because it is in the print. So you have mentioned about Unilever, you have mentioned about Singapore Airlines, how they
Yeah.
are aligned to the values, and whereas companies like Enron, which had to go into the filing of the bankruptcy suit because of the misinformation in the balance sheets which they did.
Yeah.
And when we come to the chapter 2, when very interesting, you use a term called ERM, where it was like I related to more of a history of Egyptian risk management to the enterprise risk management. Very nice correlation I could make. So when you address the first issue, the consciousness, which I call it, consciousness about spiritual risk management, and when you come to the this second chapter, you transform there from, and again you are still on the issues which are there. How about this enterprise risk management and the Egyptian link? How do you establish that in the second chapter?
Yeah, so uh, it, I would put it this way that see, even if the traditional, I would say rather the old practices which are going on in the Egyptian empire, obviously they had their own practices and so on. So obviously they would have never thought about this in such a terminology in a technical term. They would have just gone about and executed solutions to mitigate risk of flooding and risk of extreme heat and sandstorms and so on. So, but when you try to bring it, try you want to captivate the audience, so obviously you have to link the traditional practices with the modern. So that's why that word Egyptian and enterprise, because the entire Egyptian kingdom was working like an enterprise itself,
Right.
modern enterprise. So that's why I linked it.
I think that again comes to which I always say is that the spiritual part was taken care of in the enterprise, and the further when I entered the chapter 3, it was very pertinent to today's environment. Because now you're talking about the corporate guys, the latest case of ENY employee, recently, which actually the burnout syndrome. You have cited many studies into it, whether it is Gallup or whether it is UN, which are citing the burnout. So when I was reading, I was looking at it as if because of these two pertinent issues, furthermore, it happens, it percolates down to the employee health being or the mental well-being. So this is very, pertinent to the times, today's times as well. What has been happening? What is your opinion?
Yeah, see, when it comes to this case, which we all
Yeah.
going around media about this unfortunate young girl who lost her life due to overwork, I think this has been happening in almost all the top companies since many, many years. The only thing is that at this point of time, uh, it was the courage of a mother, and who wrote that very courageous letter to the chairman of EY, highlighting that it was because of that overwork that her daughter unfortunately lost her life. Before that, if you and even if you look at the reactions that have come
Right.
on this on the back of this letter, all former ENY employees clearly, reacting very negatively to the chairman's letter. It clearly shows that this issue was there since many years. It was only that each one had their own way to tackle the stress that was handed to them by by their superiors. So some of them resigned and joined different companies.
Right.
Some of them decided to quit and join some startup, and some, unfortunately, like in this case of this girl, she thought that probably continuing would showcase to her superiors that she is one of the brightest there. Unfortunately, she had to uh, give up with a life which is not at all good. And another sad part that is coming to the fore is that I was telling someone, I think one of my colleagues in my department, that employee is only a cost to the company.
Right,
You
right.
know, one of
Another
the
health.
cases now, yeah, human life is not at all valued. And another shocking part that I got to know in the letter, that none from the EY team visited our parents during our funeral. So it shows a complete lack of
Empathy.
empathy and all these values. It is completely eroded. And you see, how much ever investigation the labor department will do from the central government, which I got to know in one of the articles, and they said that they will be taking some action based on the evidences that they have seen, based on those interviews and so on. Nothing is going to change in those four big firms.
Right.
Might just, change or little cosmetic changes, like changes in the policy. They might bring some, old wine in the new bottle case,
Right,
and
right.
you try to pacify employees for some months, and after 6 months, everyone will forget about it. The same story will repeat again. And
Yeah.
see, the blame also lies on all these employees who are working. I know all of them obviously working for the paycheck. That we all know, everyone, including me, works for the paycheck. But how long are you going to support and glorify this overworking, this hustle culture? It really is beyond my comprehension. Because ultimately, to contribute to an organization, your health has to be 100%. Now, this recently, even Rowan was talking about me going through a prolonged illness. And that was the time I realized that health is so important. I missed so many days of my office, and unfortunately, my son also fell sick. So I realized that health is wealth. Without health, how are you going to contribute? And even in this case, this girl passed away, they'll just recruit another person in her place and the work will start again.
It's not.
So will start again. So there's just no value to a human life. So that's why I know I may be sounding very controversial here, but I think it's high time that all of us stop giving importance to loyalty and focus on our own well-being and our careers. That's
So I fully agree, Varun, on this. And when you're talking, taking your heart out on this topic because you're going through this turmoil of your own. I really wish you a speedy recovery first. But I think this character entire the way the things are happening or have happened in the past, like you were mentioning, people just keeping quiet, not talking much, stress going so high, whether it is domestically because everything impacts. Your work pressure comes home, also goes there. And then I think there are few good examples when I was reading, there were always silver lining also in that. You had given example in the chapter 4 of Tata Code of Conduct.
yes.
You were given Mayo Clinic, which is into the medical field, considering the holistic approach of spiritual well-being also, rather than only the medical well-being. Then talking about the core values, I think where the institution or the organization which we work on, if they have framed or they have a kind of a uh, maybe core values you can call them, or the way they work, that also has got a lot of impact on the employee health. What is your opinion about it? Does organization does have a major role in that as well, besides
Yes,
employee?
I do agree that if any organizations has a very strong value system, it definitely gets cascaded over generation with employees. Now, if you look at my own case, I was part of the Tata Group
Okay.
almost 11 years. And I could see those value systems really being followed at every level, even though we had our own differences when it came to our, process improvements and so on. Ultimately, at the end of the day, needs to have this kind of friendship that is to go beyond the work thing. Even though we used to have, put personal differences when it came to how to improve our work, how to delight our customers and so on. And even if you look at this 2611 attacks that happened, and I remember, I think Ratan Tata had announced some big incentives for those employees who had given their lives. And he said he gives some, I think, free salary or something like that for continuous 2 years or 3 years, something like that. Some a very, very unique announcement that was done. And that itself shows how generous and how much of empathy is being practiced at the topmost levels of the Tata Group. And that's why you see this Tata Group is still doing so well after 100 years, after almost a century. They are into every segment. Now they are getting into semiconductor business. They are into, Air India. They are acquired.
Salt to sky.
So yeah,
Yeah.
the sky is
Salt.
just the level for the Tata Group. So, and because they are contributing to the community, for them it is the community that matters. It's an employee that matters.
I
So
think, like you said, Tata's, for me as a, I'm a investor also in stocks. So normally when I look at many companies, I research a lot of balance sheets of companies and also do. This is for me is an institution. It is not a one person company today. Ratan Tata, just because of the the lineage, he has come to that level, and today N. Chandrasekharan is doing, which is a very professional way of running a conglomerate. He's talking about
yes,
a big elephant into leapfrog. You're talking about a giant which has to be transformed into something which can leapfrog into future, which is not practically possible, I think, but with the kind of agility and the mindset of the core values, as you rightly said,
yeah,
the integrity and the honesty on which the entire group is. I mean, that's the reason more than 100 years the group is still surviving well and it is growing. That's the reason. And I like this. This is my favorite chapter coming to your book, chapter 6, the role of leaders in risk management. Here, spiritual risk management, you talk about Krishna, you talk about Arjuna, you talk about Sudama, then you talk about the story of even the cricketers, Saurav Ganguly, Dhoni's leadership style. Then coming to again Ratan Tata, we just discussed on it. I think this is where the organization structure of putting things into print and somebody acting upon it, a leader who's implementing. So, what is your take on it? How important is leadership? Who's running the show? Like you said, you had differences, but you were good friends as well, right? So, it is professional and personal. So, please give some light on.
it's a big thing for a leader to accept that he has gone wrong. And even later on, turning around Jaguar Land Rover, and you'll not believe, for I think 4 5 years on the trot, Tata Motors was surviving just because of Jaguar Land Rover.
Yeah.
And I can tell you and obviously you must have read the balance sheets on Jaguar Land Rover. So that the second case, and you know, even when he used to visit our office premises, and he used to be treated like an absolute celebrity. You will not believe it. Every employee would leave his work and just go and wait in the
Yes.
line with hand with him. And that's an experience which you really need to have. Unfortunate, I could not meet him personally. I heard these stories that he used to come to visit different companies when he had free time and interact with everyone and understand. And the best part is he used to understand the work, even though he didn't have much idea. He used to have an eagle overview, but his questions would be so good that everyone would be taken aback that how come when he's not part of the daily operations, how do we understand so much? So hats off to people like Ratan Tata. I think he's someone any person should rather emulate. He and MS Dhoni, these are amazing two leaders that we all should try to emulate.
Yeah, again, leadership, as you rightly said, it is more of understanding someone from their angle rather than giving your angle. And rightly put, Ratan Tata giving time to any employee, because I have also read a couple of his, snippets here and there, and the review is similar. जितना हम ऊंचा उठते हैं लाइफ में उतना humble हो जाते हैं. We have to be humble towards what God has been kind to give us, and we need to share our things, which came somewhere in the chapters which I was reading. The Chanakya's thing to share the wealth with people. Going, like example you had given, in that there was a pot where there was a ring which was put, and he was teaching him how you cannot even flip and take out the golden ring out of without slipping water. Which is sorry, it was oil actually. So
Oh, yeah.
action happens is like concentration of wealth with few will not even fetch. It has to be spread across, if not fully, but at least to a justifiable level, which everybody come. So coming back again to the book, chapter 7 had Google search inside yourself. I never knew this. Few things I learned from the book, because every time you read someone and you get his insight into you, and the code of conduct. I think Google is not only working on AI after reading your chapter 7. He was also working on EI. And again, talking about Salesforce also along with that. And I came to know Salesforce, the second biggest client of Salesforce is Indian company Bajaj Finance because I have invested there. So, then you relate to certain things, you connect the dots. I was reading the chapter and I read that news item also. So, do you have any input on this about the new age companies, the tech companies? How are they going on the spiritual risk management route?
Yeah, these tech companies do have a very similar, strong, value-driven system. Because even if you look at the history of Google or Microsoft, the way they built their way up, and now obviously they saw the future, they went with the future, and they kept on innovating themselves. So that's one aspect we definitely see, you know, very good about these tech companies. But yes, there have been, we hear of reports of employees leaving because of dissatisfaction with these top companies. But yeah, so no company is perfect. They
Perfect. Yeah.
still have, there's still a long way to go for them when it comes to, the spiritual aspect of it. Yes, they have succeeded a lot on the technology and the financial front, but yes, they still have a long way to go when it comes
I
to.
know because the few days companies you have cited example of Facebook, giving
Mhm.
options, control your feed, and social
Yeah,
media is such like unending well. So I was reading this quote by Netflix CEO who's saying that sleep is their biggest competitor. So where we were on one side we're talking about the mental well-being or employee well-being. On the other side, your business model itself is taking care of sleep because sleep is you're not sleeping, then only you're watching those on Netflix. Yep. So that actually has got a kind of a paradox when I was reading because one way we're talking about corporate karma, we're talking about the holistic being, but wherein we are also attached to debits and credits, we're attached to bottom lines, we're attached to targets. No? So interestingly, the answers to few of them was in the Artha Shastra, which you mentioned in chapter 9 about Chanakya, Niti and whatever. I think he is the one of the epitome of the mentors which someone can have. Can you give any one of the examples in your corporate career about a mentor like Chanakya, which I think you mentioned in your preface and notes acknowledgement? I read that you mentioned three of the people who have. Can you give some light on them? How are they impacted?
yeah. One was definitely a big change that I, experienced in my career was because of Shushan Gaonkar. He was someone I came across his ad, I think, on Facebook or LinkedIn on a career workshop. So, and I found it very thought provoking because he spoke about, clarifying your short term and long term goals with respect to your career first, and then working on, filling the skill gap and so on. So I said, okay, let's go with an open mind and, attend his workshop. And what I found very, you know, rather I liked about that workshop was he gave individual attention to each one of us. He took our cases individually, and I remember he spent almost probably 2 to 3 years just to refine our resume. First, he told us to work on it ourselves, and then we had a session, one-to-one session with him, and he told us, where we need to tweak our resume and helped us to identify our skill gap with respect to our, short-term and long-term goals. And as we started applying, especially me, when I started applying for a job in a new company, and I started getting interview calls, I was not able to crack interviews, and how to overcome that challenge. And I remember at a point of time when I almost was on the verge of getting selected in a BFSI for Brother Bank, and they rejected me. Yeah, not rejected, rather, my thing was put on hold. And I remember going through extreme frustration. And he said, this is actually a success story. Even though you are not being selected, it is the company was not selected you because of your own reasons. So don't give up hope. Just continue. And that time I realized it is all about being patient and just continuing with the actions. And finally, I got through in a pharma firm, worked there for 5 months, and then again I upgraded my skills, and then finally I joined the program.
So it's
He's one of the great mentors.
So I have a word for it. Whenever you are rejected or you're not selected, whatever way you put it. So I put it, it's their loss. No? एक तीन word है.
Yes, that one.
So it keeps you ahead of time. You not think about what you have lost. And I think mentors, आपने जैसे बोलकर you're telling so, remembering every stage or how the counseling sessions happen. That shows that everybody, hum sabko, we all require sometimes, to somewhere to give our, put our things to someone else, which we know will not go further. Because corporate mein to ye, if you start sharing, things which are internal, it also becomes very tricky sometimes, politically right or if you're sharing too much with your bosses or with your colleagues, and today it's kind of a rat race, or you can say everybody's running for that particular award or reward in terms of promotions or anything. Uh, Coming back to the book, chapter 10 is something which I have skipped one chapter because it was not something because it was your area of domain where you have actually talked about the indexes, no? You have talked about ethical decision making index and those the charts, and because you are from that particular domain, I think that was one thing which even the conflict incidence index I saw. Of course, that I kind of skipped because क्या होता है कि when we are reading a book, what is connecting we read, and sometimes we skip those things. It is better because the journey is further. When you went to the chapter 10 and you're talking about the Govardhan Hills example and how you are correlating that with the organization's structure of today and the leadership style was something which I really fascinated with, because that gave me the gist that this is how the corporate karma is being. वो एक the कृष्ण जी ने जब अर्जुना को बोला कर्म करते रहो और you have to be all that, the एक जोक सभी याद आया, then somebody send me day 4 on WhatsApp, कहते कर्म करते रहो, फल का क्या है, फल तो बाजार में मिलता है. So you do your work, forget about that. So tell me something about your spiritual connection with because I could see you are a spiritual person. That's the reason this book is come. So can you give some connection, insight, not connection, about your spiritual journey with the corporate journey?
See, the spiritual journey started from my childhood itself, as I spoken earlier with one of my apprentices. So in my childhood itself, I was heavily influenced by my father, who was rather a big devotee of Swami Vivekananda, and even my mother. The value systems that they taught, indirectly or directly, they connected with spirituality. And my aunt also, she was a big devotee of Jesus Christ, and her certain experiences I saw, and personal experiences, spiritual experiences, because of which I started reading spiritual books. That's how my journey started in childhood. And then later on, I came across the book Autobiography of a Yogi in my 11th, 12th standard. So that was when it really transformed my life, and I started buying his books, his lectures, and I took the YSS lessons also. And then I started practicing some of the techniques taught in the lessons, including the house of technique. And then later, once I joined the corporate world, and then I changed my track to more of chanting and practicing the Hopono technique and so on. So it has been a journey which has been that.
And that actually shows in your book. And I liked one in the chapter 11, no, you have mentioned about a term called fubbing. It's snubbing someone from using phones, and we all do such a mistake. Like I am from sales, I've been doing sales for so many years. And when we used to go to our customers, no, everybody, like, we used to keep our phones on silent just because we are respecting someone else's time. We've traveled all the way. Today's world, being in digital, every notification, every pop-up, everything has to be addressed like as if we are working in a fire department. We have to respond. Otherwise, it's like FOMO. We've lost something. And I follow digital curfew. I normally have Wi-Fi out times. I do because it connects you back and to you connecting to you the spirituality part because of whatever books you've read. But if you don't connect to your own self, you miss out on that connection part. And thanks for introducing me to fubbing. This is something which I really will take it forward with my own inputs and notes. And the last thing which I want to connect, which also was new to me was Patagonia and the Dom shoes. Something giving back to the society. Like you said, Nano was a disaster. Today, Air India and Vistara may turn up something, and Chandrasekhar is ready to take that. But here's something different. Here's something which you are giving for free. This is what do you say about it? Please give this, more insight to the viewers about these two organizations that you mentioned.
Yeah, see, Patagonia and the other company you just spoke about. So, uh, see, if you look at their case, giving back to the community, I think, see, it's not all about always earning profit or about earning revenue. See, ultimately, at the end of the day, who's your end customer? Yes,
Yeah.
it may be a B2B or B2C customer, but ultimately, those products are being used by individuals like us. Someone is going to use that product or service. Now, even a simple Google search page, Google is providing to people like us. If you look at Tata Group, they are selling cars, they are selling salt. Everything is being used by us. So why not, see, the CSR term it's just say a legal obligation that is being fulfilled by companies. I think companies should start going beyond it. I think this term CSR should be stretched and should include volunteering, and companies should start understanding that giving back to people, doing something that will really uplift people emotionally and spiritually will go a long way. Goes out.
I think you said rightly when I was reading about Patagonia, it is talking about a campaign, don't buy this jacket. They are themselves saying, buy. It's like negative marketing. नामी में भी नामी है तो अगर उल्टा बोलोगे फिर भी you have a benefit. And then one and we repair your stuff. You could give us your jacket, I'll repair your zip for you and give it back. And one is Tom shoes is amazing, a shoe for one. You buy one shoe from us, we'll give it to somebody who's needy about another shoe. You're talking about I buy a salt packet from you, you're giving to someone who's needy or charity, And then going to the eyewear thing, even companies like today's next gen companies like Lenskart, it is not a question of money, like you said, it is a question of the social responsibility which is coming from inside. And whenever we give facilities, they are bound to be misused as well. So as you said, CSR term needs to be remodified. It is not forcing people to pay, it is voluntary, it has to be going to the rightly said. Varun, I think we have discussed through and through the book, because this is what I, as a reader, enjoyed in your book. So I asked those pertinent questions, which I think, as a person with me, we're connected. And I think to first-time authors and people who have started this literary journey, I salute you on, because this is something which is not everyone will be doing it. And I wish personally you all the very best, good health, and only happiness, and spread. Reading your corporate karma, is I'm got a piece of you here. So this is something which I've got, and I'll cherish it. Thank you so much for giving.
Thank you so much, Kapil. You have made my day today, and it has been. It is really. I am getting very emotional now. This is something that this was my dream, that one reader come and tell me that his life is probably going to be changed by some of the things that I've written in this book. You really made my day. Thank you so much.
Certainly. Thank you so much.